August is always a pretty good reading month for me anyway, but I wasn't sure with me having not the best reading year overall, whether it would be as good this year or not. But I'm really pleased with what I read in August. Let me tell you about it in my wrap up. Welcome back, or if you are new here, welcome. My name is Katrina and I make bookish content here on this channel every week and then movie reviews here at the weekend. In the description box below you will find all of my social links, including my blog and my Goodreads, where I have got a review of a couple of these ones. I also participated in Bout of Books this month. I decided last minute to participate in it, even though I was on holiday for the first little bit of it, and that vlog will be coming your way very soon. It is already up, we're just getting this video out first. And yeah, I read a broad variety of books this month, and I also read something from each of my ebooks, physical books and audiobooks little genre. So previously I'd always done wrap-ups featuring ebooks, physical books and audiobooks, and that's how I categorized it. But more recently it's only been audiobooks, so it's nice to have something in every category. And the first two audiobooks I read are not even out yet, although by the time you're watching this video one of them is about to be out, and I have a standalone review of it, so I'm not going to say an awful lot about it here. This is Girlfriends by Holly Bourne. It's Holly Bourne's next adult fiction novel, and it is amazing, hence why I am going to be making a whole video all about it. The tagline for this one is oh no, it doesn't have a tagline. That's so exciting. These are just endorsements from two of my other favourite authors. And I just loved it. So make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on my review of this one coming. But just be known that you should order this one and read it or listen to it, however you take in your books. It is linked in the description box below. It was fabulous. And then speaking of fabulous books which are not out yet, I also read, I was in a mood, read A Christmas Celebration by Heidi Swain, which comes out in the UK in October. I can't remember the date in October. I think it's around October half term. And I'm sure that the finished copies of this one will be stunning, because you know that these bits are going to be like foily and things like that. Heidi Swain loves a bit of foil on her covers. And this one takes Paige and her trip back to Wimbridge and Winthorpe Hall. It says old friends, new flames and a season to remember. So Paige is back, and you know, we need to help her rediscover the magic of Christmas and help her sort of open up and love again, and all the things that we need to do with Heidi Swain characters. They always need a little bit of saving, but the reasons that Paige needs saving in this book are what I think makes this one unique in the world of the Heidi Swain novel. The reasons behind her sort of being back in Wimbridge and needing the lovely help of the residents of Winthorpe Hall is definitely different. I'm not going to spoil it. This channel is always spoiler free, but I thought that it was fabulous. And if you're a fan of An Irish Wolfhound, there's one of those in here. If you're a fan of like rediscovering all the other characters in Wimbridge, they are all in here. It's fantastic. And we get to sort of like catch up with them, see how they're doing, and have them help with our new character, which is always lovely. It's really, really nice reading a Heidi Swain novel, especially the Christmas ones. Like, I like the summer ones, but the Christmas ones are just magical and lovely. And I believe I'm seeing Heidi Swain at an event coming up in November, so I'm very excited to sort of hear a little bit about what's coming up next for her, but also these characters that she created, these newer ones, and revisiting older ones. It's always nice to hear where they came from and, you know, why we connected with them. And then I have a physical book that I read as a ebook, just because I knew I was going to read it whilst I was out and about in London. And this is one of my quick reads. This is Blind Spot by Paula Hawkins. And I did vlog the reading of this in my quick reads reading vlog. So I will leave that linked up above because I have already posted that one. And this one just says, "You'll never see it coming." I thought that the play on the title in this one was interesting, but it definitely wasn't my favourite quick reads. And so whilst we're moving on to quick reads, let's move on to physical books, because I did read the other 4 quick reads that I wanted to read from this year's selection of 8, and I read 3 of them as physical books. So I read The Cutting Season by M.W. Craven. I read My Name is Why by Lemn Sissay. And I read Sofia Khan and the Baby Blues by Ayisha Malik, and I talk about all of these in detail as I read them in that reading vlog. So go check out that reading vlog, and I will talk about them all in there. But it was really nice having a non-fiction in there, I have to say. And then another physical book that I read as part of my Bad Books readathon was The Birdcage by Eve Chase. And again, I sort of talk a little bit more about this book in that video, so make sure you watch that video when it comes up. But this is definitely marketed as a thriller. Eve was at Harrogate Crime Festival and then did another book event. So my book event vlog coming your way soon will have a little bit more detail about that in there. However, I would say that this one, whilst it's thrillery in the sense of like, oh, what happened there? Oh, could something thrilling be about to happen here? I would say it was more sort of thriller light. It's definitely got a mystery element to it, and you definitely want to continue turning the pages to find out what happened and why. But it's not thriller in the same sense as like Paula Hawkins, Lisa Jewell type of like, oh my God, they're in imminent danger, what's going to happen? But I really enjoyed the fact that it was more sort of thriller light, because as you know, I don't tend to read a lot of crime thriller. I'm more on the romance side or on the non-fiction side. And this one had that like claustrophobic feel, and that's what made it more thrillery. And it had a multiple narrative and a multiple timeline, which if you've been following the channel for a while, you know that is my jam. And so I was really enjoying reading this one, and I'm really glad I read it as a physical book. It was really pleasant to read, but I just adore the cover. I think the cover is just glorious, and when you know a little bit, I'm just holding it closer there for you, when you know a little bit more about the book, a lot of the stuff on the cover makes sense. I'll just let you take in the spine and the back of the cover as well. And obviously, because I went to an event with Eve Chase, my version is signed too. And so that made it just all the more pleasurable to read as well. And I think that's all the physical books. So let's move on to audiobooks. And I read quite a lot of these as part of Battle of Books because, as I say, the first part of it I was away, and so we were listening to books in the car. So I listened to The Comfort Book by Matt Haig, which was not quite what I was expecting it to be. It's definitely a shorter read. I'm not as much of a fan of this cover as I am of the independent bookshop cover, and so I'm kind of glad I didn't buy the independent bookshop cover though, and just borrowed the audiobook from my library, because I didn't love it as much as I thought I would, but I enjoyed the fact that it was non-fiction, because I did listen to a lot of other non-fiction as well. I listened to Act Like a Lady, Questionable Advice and Ridiculous Opinions, and Humiliating Tales from Three Undignified Women. So these are the lady gang who started a podcast that then turned into a TV show that then brought out this book, and they just brought out or are about to bring out another book. I didn't know who they were apart from the fact that one of them was on Glee. But it was interesting. It was okay, but they did repeat themselves quite a bit. And I listened to a little bit of it with Ollie, and he found that some of the times they were kind of contradicting themselves. So he found it to be quite hypocritical. So there's his views. I thought it was interesting, and it made me sort of think about some of the things that I was doing, but I wouldn't necessarily read their next book or listen to their podcast or watch their TV show. Did make me want to watch Glee though, so there's that. And then speaking of non-fiction, more non-fiction I've enjoyed, I listened to Zabars, A Family Story with Recipes by Laurie Zabar. Now, I've always been interested in like delis and the history of delis. I listen to the Bowery Boys podcast sometimes, and they talk into sort of like the history of food in New York, like the history of the donut and the cannoli, and Zabars and Katz's and things like that get mentioned. And so this was interesting to listen to. It does start off quite slow and definitely picks up around about the halfway point. Once we're done with the war, it gets definitely more interesting. And there was a lot that I didn't know about it, having sort of passed it and popped in to like have a look, and it definitely made me want to watch You've Got Mail again, because there's a part where Meg Ryan is in Zabars in You've Got Mail, because Nora Ephron was apparently a loyal customer, or is apparently a loyal customer of Zabars, and it does bring you right up to 2022, post-pandemic. What are we doing with Zabars now? So I thought that was interesting, and it was a nice choice to sort of bring it all the way up, because I definitely wanted to sort of find out what happened what's happening now, what happened then. So that was interesting. And I think that none of those were on my August TBR. A couple of things that were on my August TBR. We have The Museum of Ordinary People by Mike Gayle, which is Mike Gayle's latest. It literally does surround the Museum of Ordinary People. Hope and love can be found in unexpected places. It's not my favourite Mike Gayle. I just found it was a little bit slow. And I think had I been reading it outside of a readathon context, I might have taken longer to read it. I was sort of like reading it whilst I was doing other things, but I think if I was reading it and picking it up and putting it down on my commute, I might feel like it was a bit of work to get back to, which you don't want. And it's not something that I've come to expect with a Mike Gayle novel. It's got the sort of heart and soul that a Mike Gayle novel has, and I always love his writing, but it's just not my favourite Mike Gayle. But you know, we can't love everything, and that's that. It's going to be hard to write a written review of that one. This is why I've avoided it for so long. I have not written my written review of it yet. And then another one that was on my August TBR as well is Arrival Stories, which is sort of curated by Amy Schumer and Christy Turlington Burns. Women share their experiences of becoming mothers. Definitely put me off becoming a mother. And I listened to this in one big chunk, and it was delightful to hear all the different narrators. I really recommend, if you are going to pick this one up, to do it as an audiobook, because it does have multiple narrators, and so that makes it a little bit more kind of accessible, and a little bit more emotional. It gives it more feeling because it's got that human aspect of the people actually like narrating their own stories. So I thought that was interesting. And then I did a reread. Where is it? I do have it here. I did a reread, which again was on my August TBR, of Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton, which was just such a pleasure to reread. And I did reread it in one big gulp, and then watch the TV show, also binging that in one day, and then made a book versus movie video about it. So I will leave that linked up above and possibly in the end screen for you, because I talk about it there. It was a reread, so obviously you know I enjoyed this book, and did a book versus movie for it, so that was great. And then another one that was also already on my TBR was Feeling Myself by Natalie Lee. I think this was the first thing that I read in the month of August. I remember reading it right at the beginning of the school holidays. How I Shed My Shame to Find Sexual Freedom, and You Can Too. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I read about this one coming out, I think in Cosmopolitan magazine. I don't know why I had a Cosmopolitan magazine, but I did. And I read about this one in there, and it was, again, interesting and gave me sort of food for thought. It wasn't exactly what I was expecting, but I still love the cover of this one, I have to say. And it was worth waiting for the audiobook to come out, even though the hardback was already out. I wanted to listen to it on audio, because I think that kind of content is best taken in on audio if you can access audiobooks. And then one that I feel like has been on my TBR before. Yes, it was on my TBR in March, because I got a copy of Daisy Buchanan's other book, With Beautiful Spreads, and read that. And then I wanted to read this one, On the Right Track or Coming Off the Rails, Careering by Daisy Buchanan. This one was very relatable. It follows two women at different stages in their career. They work together, but they are at very different stages in their career, but they're both kind of being sort of semi-screwed by their jobs. And so it's interesting to hear the ins and outs of their thoughts. Like, you know, all Daisy Buchanan's writing, like, it's very brutal and honest and very just no holds barred. It says how it is. So if somebody's having a threesome, you get to hear about that threesome. If somebody's having really bad reaction to something that they ate, you get to hear about that. And I really like that in a book, and I like that in Daisy Buchanan's writing, and I will continue to read anything that she writes. And so future TBRs, if there's a Daisy Buchanan book coming out, I'm going to read it. Then, just because I was trying to listen to other bits and pieces on the Penguin Random House Volumes app before it went away, I mentioned that I think in my July and my August TBR, I read Poemsia Poemsia, which is a novel. It's a YA novel. She dreamt of being a poet, but what happens when the dream comes true? And I thought this was interesting because it's an Australian teen who ends up sort of, capturing social media's attention with her poetry and going to New York to sort of ride that out. And yeah, I liked the premise of this one. It wasn't exactly what I expected it to be, and parts of it definitely dragged a little bit, but it was really interesting what it had to say overall when you're looking at it as an overall book rather than the bits that you sort of did and didn't like. It definitely is interesting with what it has to say, and I like the fact that it highlights how poetry can be sort of discovered and highlighted through social media, because that's how I got back into poetry. I would never have picked up poetry books, and yet I've got videos and a whole playlist talking about poetry books here on this channel, and that's thanks to seeing them on Twitter and Instagram. And so that was really interesting. As a YA novel, I think it's probably not quite pacey enough in my opinion, but I enjoyed listening to it, and then it made me want to listen to other poetry or read other poetry. And so there was a couple of poetry books that I had there on the Penguin Random House Volumes app, one of them being September Love by the same writer. And so I thought that this was Ang Lee, but it isn't according to the audiobook, but I don't want to pronounce it and mispronounce it. So I listened to September Love, and again, it had a similar sort of slower, more dragged out pace to Poemsia, however you want to pronounce it. And so I guess that this is just this writer's style. I think I'm used to poetry just being a bit more sort of, I don't want to say pacey again, but just a bit quicker or more clipped. And this one was more sort of lilting, dragging, and I didn't sort of necessarily know where one poem ended and another began, if that makes sense. And then I also listened to 30 Talks Weird Love by Alessandro Navarez Varela. And this one has some sections that are in Spanish, some sections in English. And this one did sort of fit my usual poetry mold, the kind of things that I tend to listen to. It wasn't necessarily anything groundbreaking, but I thought it was nice that it talked about love. It's not necessarily one that I would go back to and go, oh, I have to buy the physical copy of this one so I can tab it up. And then my sort of final listen of the month of August was my final listen on the Penguin Random House Volumes app. And this was Yearbook by Seth Rogan, which is sort of Seth Rogan's semi-memoir autobiography type of thing. It's narrated by him, but it also has some other cast members coming in to do guest pieces, and there's quite a big range of different voices that talk in this one. As you can imagine, with Seth Rogen, there are some funny stories, but there are also some honest and heartwarming stories, and you get to hear a little bit about his history and growing up just outside Vancouver and what that was like. And so I enjoyed this on my last couple of days before going back to big work. I was still commuting to and from school, but listening to this one and listening to it a little bit while I was putting up some displays in my classroom. So that was, really interesting to listen to and made for a good final book of the month. And there you have it. I listened to some poetry. I listened to some non-fiction, memoir type non-fiction, as well as sort of self-improvement type non-fiction and history type non-fiction. I listened to some YA fiction. I read some quick reads. I read some thrillers. I read some romance. And I read that amazing new book from Holly Bourne, which I am going to be making a full review of. So make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on that review. Let me know in comments what you are going to be reading in September. Did you have a good August reading month? Is there a particular month of the year that works best in reading for you? For me, it's always August. January's pretty good too. I don't know. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you with my next video. Thanks for watching.